that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good morning. Welcome to exPat InSights. I'm your host, Raju Mandhyan. Here at exPat InSights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats, and immigrants who have made Philippines their home. This morning on exPat InSights, we have a little surprise for you because a former host on this show has decided to host the host. That means he has thrown out a challenge saying that, Raju, you have been asking so many questions to so many foreigners for the last 3 years. It's time somebody put you in the spotlight and somebody challenged you as a person and the things you do. So my guest host, who's gonna try and probe into the deeper insides of me, Mr. Chritian Clay Mendoza, Trade Commissioner of Mexico, more Filipino than Mexican. To you, Chritian.
Thank you so much, Raju, and welcome to all of our audience. It's a pleasure to be here. A few weeks ago, I had the honor and the pleasure of being interviewed by Raju on my work, on my experiences in the Philippines, etc., etc. And we thought, why not turn the tables around this time and let the interviewee ask the questions. Our audience is used to having Raju ask all of his guests many probing questions, some personal, some professional, to get to know about their lives a little bit better. But rarely do our guests get to know a little more about Raju.
Oh, yeah.
So, Raju, welcome to your show, and let us get started.
All right.
Filipinos are some of the most well-traveled people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
From all social classes, from those who have the least to those who have the most.
Mm-hmm.
Filipinos love to travel. Sometimes they travel out of necessity, sometimes for pleasure. They love going abroad. They love seeing new cultures.
Mm-hmm.
They are very adaptable to new cultures. It is very interesting, however, to Filipinos, when foreigners come to this land. Why did the foreigner decide to come here? How does the foreigner feel here? What are that foreigner's good and bad experiences in the nation? And Filipinos, I think, are very, very curious about that. So today, the first part of our interview, Raju, if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind,
Yeah.
is going to be about how you arrived in the Philippines and what your experience here has been since then. So please tell us the first time you came to the Philippines. When was it and what were the circumstances?
All right. The first time and the last time that I came here was in November of 1981. And the circumstances at that time was Marcos was still here. And Philippines had been a rich and a successful country in the previous decades of before the 80s, no? And 80s was a tough time, or late 70s and early 80s were a tough time for Philippines. That's when the martial law had been put on and removed. So I came here as a young man, and it was a country in strife, financial, economic, political strife. But being as young as I was, I didn't know this well, or I didn't understand it. And the reason of me leaving my home country, I came to study at the AIM, in Asian Institute of Management. I was 23 years old and I wanted to study, travel, experience the world. And India at that time was also a struggling country in terms of its economic growth, in terms of opportunities. There was not much happening for people with ambition or people with a desire to travel and understand. So I had this little link here, a friend of mine, and I had heard about the Asian Institute of Management. So I packed my bags, I took a backpack, and I landed here in November 1981. And since then, of course, I've been here, and I've moved around the world, but this has been home for me.
So you basically decided to settle in the Philippines after you had finished your studies.
Well, I didn't come with the intention of settling down. I came with the intention of learning, traveling, experiencing. But as life moved on, as I tried to make a living, I made up a home, I met a lovely woman, I had kids, and then this became home. So part of it was my efforts, part of it was the panahon, as we call it in Tagalog.
Very good, very good. We see that you have learned the language, which is wonderful. And
Opo.
a lot of Filipinos will be very proud of that, that a foreigner would want to learn the language that they speak.
I think they'd be happy, not proud, because I am proud they are happy.
Very well.
Okay.
Very well. Point taken.
Yeah.
Raju, when you graduated from AIM,
Yes.
what was the first thing you decided to do?
Well, here's the story. I took the AIM test half a dozen times. I passed it all the time. I never took the AIM course. Took me 15 years until I got back into education, and that time I went to the University of Asia Pacific for my further studies. So now I am an alumnus of University of Asia Pacific. I came here that time, and of course I wanted to find a job, etc. I was an engineer by profession. There were no engineering jobs for young foreigners, at least at the time. So I began to work in the industry where most of my countrymen were. We were in manufacturing and trade and international trade. So I began to participate and work for a company, several companies in fact, in export sales. So I spent several years in export sales. Then I also changed jobs. I did some commodity futures trading. And then I went back into trade, and finally I built my own business in the late 80s.
Wonderful. That's a great story. Tell us a bit about your own business. How did you build it? And what was that business involved in?
Well, since the country was in financial doldrums, and since there was no external assistance for me, I had to build my business from scratch. That means you save every single penny, and then you learn the trade, then you find a little need in the market, or at least in the flow of, in the marketplace, not really a need for the consumer. And so I put up this trading company, which was representing American companies, and I was buying goods, consumer goods, textiles and handicrafts, and other things that Philippines is good at making, and I was having them shipped to the U.S. So I started from scratch. I mostly rolled my sleeves up and did a lot of my work on my own. And the business grew after the first 3 or 4 years of struggle. You know, it had to be nurtured. It grew up until the last decade, up until the end of last century.
Okay, and then what happened?
Well, that period of late 80s and early 90s was also a period of growth for the Philippines. You were not here after President Marcos moved to Hawaii. It was President Cory, and she came in when the country was in tatters, really. And she coming from very little political experience, but she put the country together in terms of spirit and value, which she did, and we are proud of that. Then came in Mr. Ramos, and he also took in a very troubled country with very little resources in terms of power, infrastructure, systems, and the old school, the old culture that existed. For his time, it was a peak in business for Filipinos. Many large Filipino corporations today that you see, companies like SM or the real estate companies, Mega World and Phil Estate, these sprouted and grew. Even small businesses, a company like French Baker, it was formed in the late 80s, early 90s, and it has come to become big because of that period of Ramos and post-Ramos. So my business also grew up until the year 2000. The difference between the companies that grew big within the boundaries of the Philippines and my business was that my business was dependent on sales and growth on external circumstances. That means I had very few clients. These were business-to-business clients. There were very few. And so my business was dependent on global trends rather than domestic trends. No?
Okay.
So in 2000, prior to 2000, if you know, there was something called GATT.
Yes, of course.
General agreement. You're a trade commissioner. Why am I telling you this?
Tariffs and trade, yes.
So general agreement on trades and tariffs, and those conversations moved on to WTO,
Yes.
where new compliances were supposed to come in, and new trade laws were supposed to set in. The whole world in the late 90s, up until the early part of this century, thought that all manufacturing will move to China. I mean, it was not thought. It was almost a reality that all of the Western developed world will buy all their material needs from China. And the rest of the world will just service this process of goods moving from the east to the west, and that's it. But it didn't happen. I mean, it didn't happen with such drastic effect. In the process, I had shut down my business because I thought, I don't want to go to China, neither did I want to go back to India. And I wanted to do things that were a little more satisfying to me personally. So I shut that business, and today I'm in a different profession.
Wonderful, and we will get to that different profession in
Yes,
a minute.
sir.
But this conversation has brought me to an article that I read in today's newspaper, and I just want to get your insight on this. Today's newspaper has an article on the IMF, which has asked the Philippines to ease its restrictions on foreign ownership of business in the Philippines,
Right.
to liberalize it a bit.
Right.
They feel that some of the regulations might be a bit outdated.
Correct.
Could you give us your opinion on that, being a former business owner yourself here in the Philippines?
Okay,
I told you I was going to put you on the spot, my friend.
I am not used to expressing my opinion about my host country.
Okay,
This is-
very
which is
well.
not really my host country. Today is my country. I love it. And so I have never expressed an opinion about, at least an opinion that is biased. I'm always game. I open up. I create learning. But here is my opinion today, since you put me on a spot.
It can be a constructive opinion.
It is.
Something that will help.
Well, think of this, that if a country has legislated 1,000 laws, for example, in the Book of Laws of Philippines or the Constitution, there are 1,000 laws. A majority of them, in my opinion, were written over the last several decades after it got its freedom, right? Economic conditions globally and locally, political conditions globally and locally have been changing. But laws are not easy to change. Yeah? It takes a process. It takes sometimes months and years to pass a new bill in any country. Yeah? All the more so in a country like ours or Asian countries. No? It takes a while. So some of the laws in many countries, not just Philippines, even if you go to Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, or Cambodia, or even my country, India, they're archaic. They don't belong in today's time and day. So as far as ownership is concerned, business ownership is concerned, developed countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, USA, and probably many other European countries allow majority ownership. It's only those old-fashioned countries like the Middle East, etc., don't allow majority ownership. It is based on past fear. It's based on the GATT era. It's based on prior to the GATT era, GATT era. So I think, yes, I think we must reform our laws quickly today to, number one, allow global businesses, global individuals to have a little more leeway in terms of owning, in terms of building their dream, because any business that comes in, they're building a dream. They're building a vision. So a little more leeway to them, because whatever a foreigner invests in this country, there's very little that he can really take away. Think of it. If I put up a plant and I employ 3,000 people, sure, maybe companies will take the profits and move to another country and invest them, but the investment per se, the jobs that they create, the opportunities that they create, the economy that it turns or churns remains here. Does that make sense?
It does, very
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
very much. Indeed, in the 60s and 70s, the trend worldwide was to nationalize and for governments to own the whole economic
true.
apparatus.
Yes.
And then there was this liberalizing trend where it said,
Yeah.
no, the governments are not made to run companies.
Exactly.
Companies should be privately run, et cetera, et cetera. And so this liberalization has been happening in many countries around the world. Now, there's this debate whether free competition is actually good and healthy for the economy. Is it good for there to be 4 or 5 companies doing the same thing, and then the consumer will decide which company offers the best price and the best value, and they will buy from that company, and the other companies will then strive to offer a better price and a better value? Or should there be government intervention? Should the government say, this is the price that you can charge, you cannot charge anything more than this, because if you charge more, it's going to be unfair to the people who cannot afford to purchase your product. And so there's this ongoing debate whether international competition is fair or is unfair. Do we invite international companies here to compete openly and freely with Filipino companies, or do we restrict them in order to allow Filipino companies to grow? What are your views, Raju?
Okay, so the question is, should there be open ground for competition, or should there be control? So what amount of control there should be? Whether we open up the grounds or not for play, for equal play, whether we open up or not, no? Whether we keep controlling our borders, whether we keep tightening our laws or not, eventually market dynamics take a hand. So if you put up borders and saying that, hey, you guys cannot come in with cheaper medicine, for example, no? The medicines are a need within the boundaries of the country. Filipinos, 95 million Filipinos, will need cheaper medicines. 25 years ago, there were no generics. There were no generics. There was only these branded, high-end medicines sold. No? What was happening? What was happening was these medicines were coming in through alternate routes. Then the laws realized that, hey, those laws are not working for us. The people are clamoring for ease, convenience, and it's a global economic at play. So from that perspective, whether it was one industry or one sector, which is the medicine industry, take any other industry, appliances, telco, building, or even the consumer goods industry or the service industries, it will eventually open up. Market conditions will force any country to open up their doors. Countries like Cambodia, countries like Chile, countries like Vietnam, with very tight controls, are also easing down their borders. So I think it behooves any government to think ahead, to stay ahead of the curve and pass the law before people start breaking it. Are you with me? Before they start smuggling, before they start cheating. So create a law which makes it convenient for growth to happen.
Very insightful, I believe. That's really an insight on insights, as the title of our show says today.
Okay.
Raju, in India, a number of years back, when they started this liberalizing process, they decided that they were going to make it easy for foreigners to form companies in India. And they came up with this one-stop, one-window idea, where you go to one office, and in that one office you fix everything that you need to fix in order to form a company in India. And I believe it's been working very, very successfully. Of course, the success of India is noticeable to everyone. Do you think, what is it like to open a business in the Philippines, for those of us who don't have that experience? Is it very bureaucratic or not? And what constructive ideas would you have in that regard?
Good question. And I do have the answer for it. So I'm not biding for time. I think we need to take a little break, because the answer is pretty big. But let me repeat the question so that the audience doesn't forget, and neither do I. The question is, India, back in the 20s, 20 years ago, they opened the borders. They made it easy, one-stop action shop. It's one-stop shop for registration. And then what about Philippines, how different it is compared to other places, or how difficult or easy it is to open a business? That's the question?
That is the question, and as soon as we come back from our break, we will hear the answer.
All right, see you. This is exPat InSights, and that's your host, Chritian Clay Mendoza.
And this is your host, Raju.